Chafalef Iyar, Ach Iyar. The 21st day in the month of Chedeshir. Hey Tovshin Tes. We're learning Tanya and we're in Perek Ches. We're learning Tanya and we're in Perek Ches. Which means that you're on Daf Yud Beis Amid Beis. I guess that would be 24. And we are 9 lines into the page. V'lochein gam. Perek Ches, chapter 8. Perek Ches, 8 lines down, 9 lines down. V'lochein gam Yetzer Hara. Now last week, we had a very, very long class. But much of it was Milabad. It was outside the Tanya. The part of last week's class which was connected directly to the Tanya inside was maybe 15 minutes. And the Teichen was that Sholosh Klipis Atmeis Nagamri doesn't have an aliyah. If someone partakes of Sholosh Klipis Atmeis Nagamri doesn't have an aliyah. The place where this is most acute is when you eat, when you ingest it internally. So the Rabbi says a person ate treif, Kavanah l'shem shamayim. He just didn't know it was treif. It has no aliyah. Now, last week's discussion was last week. We're going to move on. V'lachein, and therefore, last week was obviously Pesach Sheni. You have Teis Chafav, last week was Vidal. You have V'lachein, and therefore. Since we discussed last week the idea that Sholosh Krivas of Meis Nagami has no aliyah, therefore the following is true. I'm going to read a few lines, I'm going to type a few lines, and then we're going to fabreg about these few lines, okay? Therefore, Gam ha-yetzer hara, the yetzer hara, the evil inclination, v'keach ha-mis'aver, and the power for desire. Now notice, yetzer hara and keach ha-mis'aver has a more familiar name in Tanya, which is not here. And that is the word nefesh ha-bahamis, right? The Alter Rebbe doesn't say nefesh ha-bahamis, he says yetzer hara v'keach ha-mis'aver. But, and there's a reason. Lidvorim asurim, for prohibited things. Who is, listen to these words, shade mishade and uchrayim. Shade means a spirit, a demon, a spirit, a ghost. In Gemara it's called a ruach.
Does it necessarily mean a bad spirit?
Not necessarily. It means a life force. It means a life force. It's sometimes called mazikin. Sometimes the Chazal are called mazikin. Shade means a life force, a spirit. Nuchrayim. Nuchrayim is an Aramaic word whose Hebrew parallel is nochri. Now we translate nochri as a goy, but that's not really what nochri means. It's what nochri has become to me. Nochri means a fremde, that's all, a foreigner. Nochri means foreign, not of my type. Nochri means a fremde, an alien, different. So the Rebbe says that the Yetzer Hara and that there's a lust to do Averis for prohibited things is called an alien spirit, an alien life force. And he says, Shu Yetzer Hara shalu mishaelu. That's the Yetzer Hara good. What does it say in your Tanya? Shu Yetzer Hara shel oiv the gilul. So mine is corrected. Like he says, and you should know, I have an understanding that the Rebbe really didn't want the corrections put into the Tanya, but
What is it corrected to?
Umeis ha'olam, all goyim, not just pagans.
But the kid still for Giluli. Where's the Giluli?
Yo, basically. But it's a censura. They put it because of the censorship in Russia. You couldn't put goyim; they would not allow to print the Tanya. That the nefashes of goyim come from shalosh klipos of meyas legamri. Therefore, their yetzer hara and their keach hamesave includes zonim asur. So it's called shade mishade nechrayim, an alien spirit. Ma'ashe'enkein, as opposed to hayetzer hara. The Yetzer Hara and the power of lust for permitted temptation, permitted pleasures, the malice to satisfy one's desire, says the Alter Rebbe, who shaded Yehudayin, is called a Jewish spirit, a Jewish demon, a Jewish life force. The Fishiyachal Lachs the Kedusha is able to return to holiness, Kedil Ilas, we discussed earlier means in example. Here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in Tanya. I am not a very important person. I really am not. I'm a Malamed, small Malamed. But I'm your Malamed, yeah? Today I'm the Malamed here, yeah? You can find maybe a better Malamed, I'm sure you could, but right now I'm the Malamed. So I'm going to tell you my opinion, okay? I think these 5 lines in Tanya are some of the most important lines in the entire Sefer. Because they're a code that reveals something incredibly profound about Hashkafas HaTeira on people, on free will, and what was called in the Chazal HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oizrai, the Eibushter support. So we're going to talk about these 5 lines, and we're going to talk about them at length. We're going to spend the whole class talking about these 5 lines, and I hope, first of all, I hope I don't tell you things which are wrong, obviously. Everything I'm going to tell you has a makar. I can show you my makeres if you need. But I would like you to wrap your minds around what I'm going to share with you, because I think this is important. It's important to appreciate how the Tanya thinks, okay? We're going to start this conversation with the word teva. Teva, tes beis ayin. We're going to start this conversation with the word teva. Teva means a nature. Now later in Tanya, chapter 19, Perek Tes, we're going to have a very different use of the word teva. We're going to use the word teva as it relates to the neshama. We're going to use the word teva as it relates to the nefesh l'kis. So in chapter 19, Perek Tes, when the word teva is going to come up, the Alter Rebbe is going to say, "V'teva zeh." This use of the word teva is when things don't make sense, you invoke teva. So in Perek Tes, we're going to talk about the teva of the neshama, and the teva of the neshama is kalei sa nefesh, mesiras nefesh for the Eibishter without regard for its own metzias. But we'll get to chapter 19, in Mitzvah Hashem, we'll get to chapter, and I have a guy, I learned on the phone Thursday's Tanya. See, it tells me 2097, we're holding my chapter 42. I mean, I learned with him slow also. I'm learning almost at the same pace. I'm a little ahead. So we'll get to it when we get to it. IYH. In Mitzvah Hashem, we'll get to Perek Tes. But we're holding now Perek Tes. But I want to discuss the word teva as it's connoted, as it's intended in many places in Hasidus. Teva, it says in Hasidus, is from the word matbeya. Matbeya does not mean a coin. The source of this is the Shas HaTshuvas Chacham Tzvi. This is Maimoreh Hasidus that brings the Shas HaTshuvas Chacham Tzvi, who explains the word nes and explains the word teva. Chacham Tzvi was a contemporary of Baal Shem Tov. He was the father of the Yavitz, of Rabbi Yankov Emden. Chassidus quotes Shas HaTshuvas Chacham Tzvi is because the Shas HaTshuvas Chacham Tzvi is written Beruch HaKodesh. Svarim that are quoted in Chassidus are all written Beruch HaKodesh. And the Rebbe quoted it many times. The same Shas HaTshuvas Chacham Tzvi translates the word nes and translates the word teva. And when it comes to the word teva, he says 3 things. Obviously, teva means nature. Teva means matbeya, and matbeya doesn't mean a mint. It doesn't mean a coin, it means a mint. A source of coins. Like the Lashon Chazal, matbeya shetovu chachamim bebrachas. Matbeya shetovu chachamim begit. You have a number of instances in Shas we use the word matbeya. Matbeya means how it was coined, how it was fixed. So the word matbeya means a mold in which you duplicate many of the same. You understand? Matbeya means a mint, where you make the same thing. So the word matbeya comes to connote the same thing over and over and over again. That's a type of matbeya. So again, matbeya doesn't mean a mint. It doesn't mean a coin. It means a mint or a mold. So teva means anything which is according to a matbeya. It's been prefixed. It's been predetermined. What it is fixed. It's predetermined. That's the first type of matbeya, of teva. Second type, the first type of teva is nature. Second type of teva is matbeya. The third type of teva is from the word tviyah, like tuvu v'yamsuf. Immersed, sunk, drowning. The Hebrew word for drowning is teva, tes beis ayin. And of course the connotation means you're overwhelmed by your environment and you can't see past it. So what is nature? Nature means immersed, farzunken, angezunken, immersed, completely surrounded by a condition that is repetitive, that repeats itself again and again and again. Like the second Taich of Teva from the word Matvei. That is the meaning of the word Teva. This is what Chassidus brings from the Sefer, Shas, the Chuvas, and Chamtzi, translate the word Teva. So what do you know about Teva? Teva means it can't see past itself. Whatever it is, it can't see past itself because it's like sunk in it. And what is itself, it's been copied. Whatever it is has been predetermined, it's been stamped by some other force that gave it a nature, and it's stuck with this nature. That's how you understand the concept of Teva. So if you've been around these classes, and most of you have, Baruch Hashem, Larich Hashem V'Shanim, I'm going to miss you very much. You know that whenever I come across this conversation, and it comes up once in a while, I use the mashal from an exoskeleton. Okay, this is a little, just helpful information, okay? The Eibush created biological creations. Yeah, biological beings, living things. And there's a lot of different models, but for the purpose of this conversation, there's two different models, okay? There are endoskeletal creations and there are exoskeletal creations. That means there's some beings that have what we have. We have vertebrae, we have bones that are inside our body. And they have joints, and they're flexible, and they move, and we can bend, and we can twist, and we can turn. Yeah, and our body is surrounded by skin, by meat and skin, yeah? But our strength is inside the goof, and because it's inside the goof, it has a certain flexibility. It can move, yeah? Other creations, they're called mollusks, called crustaceans. They have no bones. They have absolutely no bones, like snails. Most of them live in water, especially the bigger ones, for obvious reasons. If you have no bones, you can't hold yourself up. But water is buoyant, you can float, yeah? And those creations, by and large, have a shell outside. There's no bones, it's just a shell. This shell is hard. The body excretes a substance, a fluid, that when it reaches the surface of the body, whether it's air or it's water, depending on the specific life form, it hardens, becomes a shell. Yeah, I mean, today for animals, I mean, there are no kosher mollusks, you understand? A snail, yeah. We don't even like to use the word, what are they called? Shellfish, no, that's what shellfish means. They all have an external hard body, and they have no bones. There's a very important component about these exoskeletal creations. The shell does not grow. The shell does not grow. It's not like the bones. As you get bigger, your bones get bigger. The shell is hard and fixed. It's stuck. So what happens when the animal gets bigger? So the expression that uses it has to molt. Molt means it has to crack out of its shell. So it excretes another fluid that makes the shell soft. And the animal creeps out, and then it grows another shell. So there's a few weeks every year when these animals are very vulnerable because they don't have this shell to protect them until they get another shell. The second shell is bigger than the small first shell. But this shell surrounds this animal and protects this animal, but it doesn't grow. It's hard. It's stuck. The only way for the animal to change is to creep out of its shell and get a new one. But that shell is stuck. It's fixed. It's very, very different than animals that have vertebrae, like most fish, right? Fish have like us. They have a spinal cord, and then they have actual spinal bones, yes, that are flexible. That's why they can move and they can support themselves and so on. Okay, this is the mushal. What is the purpose of this mushal? Teva is like a hard shell. You can't change it. Your teva is a hard shell. You can't change it. It's finished. It's not growing, it's not expanding, it's not stretching, it's not changing, it's fixed. It's absolute. That's what the truth of an endoskeletal life form is. The only way to change is to get rid of its shell. But the shell never changes. Which means, if you could imagine this, steht das Wort, the Gemorahs, that the neshama that's come down into this world. So machrizene, Allah, yadal arboam yem kedi b'tiras avlad, when a baby is conceived, there's a malach, a mamun al ha'irayin, his job is to oversee gestation, and he makes announcements. This guy's going to be rich, or he's going to be poor, he's going to be smart, he's going to be foolish, he's going to be pretty, he's going to be ugly. On and on, a whole bunch of stuff. There's only one thing that he doesn't say. What is that? Tzadik v'rosh alei ka'amar. Free will is not taken. But before a person is born, there's a malach mun al hayron. If you want to visualize it in imagination, it puts it in an assembly line, yeah? And there's a bunch of malachim waiting in a line, and the neshama passes through. And each malach is holding 3 or 4 stamps, yeah? One says Mara Shcheira, one says Mara Lavona, one says Mara Yeruka, one says Mara Aduma. The malach picks up a stamp, shoy, stamp, finished, you're a Mara Shcheira. Eat your heart out. You move to the next step. Chacham, stamp. Shpilkes, stamp. or whatever your tunas hanefesh are going to be. There are so many things that are determined by malachim l'mayla before we're born that go under the category which is called teva. We're stuck with them. Understandably, the malachim are working for the Eibishter. We're all the lumdas and the pilpul. This is a bezundar inyan. We're not talking Achaz Hashem over here. We're talking about teva and neshama. Which means when we're born into this world, so many things are stuck self, are fixed self, are teva. Now, everybody knows that we all wish we had the other guy's nature. But we also know that the other guy wishes he had our nature, which means I guess it's not so bad. Because we're all stuck. Some of us are stuck that they're happy and free, but they can't sit 5 minutes in a seat. Some of us are stuck that they love to read books, but they have such a terrible time in social groups. Who's better off? It's immaterial. This is what the Eibishter made us. This is our teva. He stamps it onto a neshama like a shell onto a mollusk, onto a crustacean. Stop, finished. Now there's so much talk in Chassidus based on Tanya about teva rishon and teva sheni and hergel nasa teva and changing your teva, whole shturim. But first of all, it's not easy, and second of all, it's not likely. Tanya talks about it. Can a person change his nature? Can a person change his nature? A person is supposed to overcome his nature. A person is supposed to not let his nature limit him. But it's almost impossible to exceed your nature, to come up with a new personality. My personality, b'teva, is chesed, and now I'm going to be a gevura person. There are people who have chesed personalities who force themselves into gevura molds and forget it. There are people with gevura personalities who force themselves into chesed mold, but it's only hergel nasa teva sheni. Your basic nature, you really can't change. This is how the Eibishter made us. Finished. And our nature is the best thing about ourselves and the worst thing about ourselves. Really. Some people by nature are very organized. But they also are not free-spirited. They're not risk-takers. They can't do meshugah things. They can't wake up in the morning and do something on a whim. You know, a week ago Friday, I got a phone call from a shliach. I'm sitting up preparing the Maimed. He calls me up. He says, "Listen, my wife's in the hospital. I have to take a group of people to Erev Shabbos. Can you do pinch hit for me?" I can't do that. The truth of the matter is that a house full of guests. But I even if I didn't, I can't do things spontaneous. It's against my nature. I can't do it. I can't just say, "Okay, sure, why not?" I need 2 or 3 days. Nothing is happening in those 2 or 3 days. It's not like I'm thinking through. Some people love that. Some people, by nature, would rather do the extraordinary. So is it a maila chesed? Yeah, it's called a mesuder. Say that as a maila, and Bilti say that as a maila. You know, Tmidin Kisidin as a maila, Musaf as a maila. But in Teva, you don't get everything. Nobody has everything in their personality. Everybody's personality is based on what they are, and every personality inhibits them, limits them. That's why we're all jealous of people around us. And people around us are jealous of us. Like a hard shell, it's fixed, it's constant, it's our teva. Men ken das nicht ändern, you cannot change it. Now for the Kabbalists keeping score at home, and of course we're all grateful for Kabbalah, so you're sure keeping score. This is the klolos, the inyan of Elam HaYetzirah. Elam HaYetzirah, the world of teva. Serving the Eibishter, but according to your nature. Bria is already higher than that. Asir, let's not discuss because it's a personal matter, you understand? But everybody comes into the world with a teva, a nature. Now, the neshama, the nefshalikis, doesn't really have a teva. Except for the teva that we can have in chapter 19 that I mentioned before. But the neshama's connection to the guf is through the nefesh habahamis. Doesn't Tanya, Perek Lamed Hey. your neshama, my neshama, our neshamas, connect to our body through the medium of the animal soul. And the animal soul has a teva. And again, we're not saying that teva is good, we're not saying that teva is bad, we're saying that teva is teva. I'm stuck with it. The milas of my teva and the chesrenis of my teva, they are who I am. Because the neshama reaches the guf through the teva of the nefesh habahamis, for all practical purposes, the neshama has a teva. Now, Mesiras Nefesh is obviously the neshama exceeding its teva. Tshuva is the neshama, obviously the neshama exceeding its teva. But the day-to-day, unless you're a Rebbe, unless you're a Oivid Elakim, like Rabbi Padakshe perhaps, we live through our teva. The shamas avelam hayetzir, only shamas avelam habriya, live in a way that exceeds their teva. We live through our nature, which means we know ourselves. You know, we all wish we know what we're good at. We know what we're not good at. We know what we're likely to do. When someone says to you, "Can you do this for me?" and you know the answer to that question, because the answer to the question, "Can you do this for me?" is not whether I want to do it for you. It's whether it's in my nature to do it for you. Now, I can break my nature. It's not likely. So someone asks you to do something which is against your nature, and you can't say no. You say yeah, and you forget. You forget. I didn't get around tomorrow. I don't understand Chagaret, yeah? Because it's against it. And if you would only simply say, no, I can't do this for you, but you don't want to say, no, I can't do it for you, because you could do it. But then you're lazy. Not you're lazy, it's hard. It's against your nature. This is a real thing. It's a real thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing, or it's a bad thing, but it's an actual thing. Everybody has a teva. Everybody has a teva. So let's agree that the Nefesh Elokis is teva, the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 19, that's a different concept. The teva we're talking about now is the teva of the nefesh habahamis. The animal soul has a nature. That nature has milas, that nature has chesrenis. And everybody's milas also is chesara. If you are a bookworm, if you're an intellectual, if you're an academic, you're a deep thinker and you're a smart guy, but you're probably not a gambler. You're not a risk taker. You're not going to be rich. Why? Because you don't have the guts to take a chance. It goes against your nature. You understand? And if you're not such a smart guy and you're more of a free spirit, you're much more likely to make a lot of money. That's a shtar steht in Pasuk, leilach achomim lechem. Farvos achochams leben lebt nicht. Was men dar farashiros. To be rich, you got to take chances. Take risks. And the biggest thing is you have to fall and get up and start over. A chacham can't do that. It's against his nature. Does it happen that chacham are rich? Sure it happens. They win the lottery. They inherit the money from an uncle who's rich. Yeah, but the tchunas hanefesh that people have a huge effect on how they can live their lives. It's an undeniable fact. We don't want to admit it, but we know it's semis. Everybody has a teva. The teva is in the nefesh habahamis, but the teva in the nefesh habahamis has an effect on our avodas Hashem. It does. Now, here in this particular Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says something about the teva of the nefesh habahamis. And he doesn't even call it Nefesh HaBahamis. He calls it Yetzer Hara and Keach HaMesav. Now, in case you don't know, Yetzer Hara and Keach HaMesav are lower than Nefesh HaBahamis. There's a maimer from the Rebbe Rashab called Eter. Hemshech Tov Reish Ein. Eter. It's one of the most extraordinary Hemshech of the Rebbe Rashab. In that Hemshech he has a long discussion, many Maimorim, beginning with Ve'ela Mishpat, where he translates Nefesh Elokis and Yetzer Teiv, Nefesh HaBahamis and Yetzer Hara, and in that Maimer he also mentions Keach HaMesav. And what he says is that the word Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh HaBahamis has to do with the Mayach, with the higher faculties. The word Yetzer, he says, has to do with the word Tzura, form, shape, has to do with the Midas. So the Alter Rebbe uses the word Yetzer. He doesn't use the word Nefesh, he uses the word Yetzer, which is a lower level. And he says you should know your Yetzer Hara and your Keach HaMesav has a teva, has a nature. And a Yid Yetzer Hara and Keach HaMesav has one nature, and Lahav LaGoy's Yetzer Hara and a Goy's Keach HaMesav has a different nature. The wording that the Alter Rebbe employs is Shed Mished in Nechroim, Shed Mished in Yehudayin, a spirit that's a Jewish spirit, and a spirit that's an alien spirit, a fremde geist, and a foreign spirit. Nochri means a fremde, an alien. Okay, but what he's describing is what I'm talking about. And here is the $1 million point. A Yid's Nefesh HaBahamis has a Teva. A Goy's Nefesh HaBahamis has a Teva. Listen carefully. I'm not making this up, okay? The Teva of the Nefesh HaBahamis of a Yid is that he cannot do an Aved. He has no desire to do an Aved. The Goy's Nefesh HaBahamis, the Goy's animal soul cannot transgress the 7 mitzvahs of Nech. The Zayah mitzvah Nech. The Rebbe said this in the Maimer, Yossi Legani Tovshin Yodimel, that's my source. But a Goy can very much enjoy Treif. Can very much enjoy working on Shabbos. Forget, he's not allowed to rest on Shabbos. He can very much enjoy wearing Kilayim. He can very much enjoy planting Kilayim. And so on and so forth. Why? Because he was never told he's not allowed. So it's not in his teva to remain distant. I'm going to say what I just said one more time, okay? The Alter Rebbe says in these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in Tanya that the teva of a human being, the nature, and again, when you say nature, you emphatically mean, you dafke mean the nefesh habamis. And the Alter Rebbe doesn't even say nefesh habamis. He says Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara is lower than nefesh habamis. It is against the nature of a Yid's Yetzer Hara to do an Aveda. It's against the nature, lahavla of a Goy Yetzer Hara, to do one of his 7 Avedas. This is incredibly revealing or radical. The Rebbe says, a Yid b'teva ken nishtar Aveda. You don't believe me? Let's read it one more time. V'lachein therefore, gam Yetzer Hara v'keach ha'masava, the Yetzer Hara of a Yid. And the desire, the power of lust, and the Nefesh HaBahamis is eideler than the Yetzer Hara. If it's true of the Yetzer Hara, it's certainly true of the Nefesh HaBahamis. L'dvarim ha'asurim for treif is mished u'nechrayim. It's a spirit which is to a Jew foreign. Because to Yetzer Hara shelo Yisrael, this is sort of Goyim. Because Nishveiseim Eshot Shum Satmeis. A Goy's Nefesh comes from Klipas Tmeis V'rois Lagamri. So for a Goy to eat treif is not an Aveda. For a Goy to be Mechal Shabbos is not an Aveda. It's a mitzvah Goy. And the Rebbe says in the Maimer, when it comes to the 7 mitzvahs of Noach, a Goy is the same thing. Just like it's against the teva of the Nefesh HaBamis of a Yid to be able in one of the Tayag mitzvahs, it's against the teva of a Goy to be able in one of the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Neach. This is what it says. But we're dealing with a Yetzer Hara after all. A Yiddish Yetzer Hara is the Yetzer Hara. He's not Batal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's a Metzias unto himself. Right? Eine bebchin is bittel, not bepayel, not bekoyach. He's a behema. He's klippa. So when it comes to Dvarim HaMutarim, permitted desires and temptations, V'keach HaMes'avel Dvarim HaMutarim, the power of the Yetzer Hara and the power of lust for permitted things. Lamalas Tavasa, to satisfy permitted taivas, is Shed Mished Yudayin, is a spirit, a demon that's Jewish. Why? In other words, a waste. I eat, you know the old story, if it's free, I want to. If it's kosher, a Yid lusts for it. The Nefesh HaBahamis, the Teva of a Yid desires taivas. Food, clothing, homes, other things, whatever pleasures are out there, as long as they're not asur, as long as they're not prohibited, the Nefesh HaBahamis, the Teva of a Yid's Yetzer Hara desires it. If it's asur, listen to this, it's against the Teva of the Nefesh HaBahamis of a Yid. It's against the Teva, the Yetzer Hara, the Keach HaMasav of a Yid. And the same is true by Goyim. A Goy b'Teva cannot violate the Sheva mitzvah b'nei Neach. No, frega kasha.
So what happened?
This is an incredible revelation. What is the revelation? The revelation is that the Yetzer Hara has a Teva. Yetzer Hara has a limit, huh? Yetzer Hara has a limit. I will do this, but I won't do this. Why? It's in my nature to enjoy pizza. But chas v'shalom, meat and chicken, meat and cheese, I don't desire. It's against the nature of my Yetzer Hara. So let me just give you a parallel, okay? One day in the future, we're going to get to Perek Dalet, chapter 24, which is even further away from us than Perek Yotes. And the Alter Rebbe is going to bring a Gemara and a Pasuk and a Chassidus on the idea of Kudasa Yizborech Shomer Aruch. He's going to talk about animals. One of the examples he's going to bring is an example of a lion. And he's going to tell a story. There was a fellow named Daniel who was thrown into a goy v'aroyes. He was thrown into a pit of lions. And the lions were hungry. And they didn't touch him. Because by Daniel, Tzelem Elikim, L'nestalek Mi'al Ponov, he had the Tzelem Elikim. And when an animal sees the Tzelem Elikim, he's molipach. Animals were hungry. But their nature did not allow them to devour him. And the other example that may remember is the Yitush. Remember Yitush Kodmach. The gnat, the mosquito, is considered the lowest of all the creatures. Why? Because it's a machnes ve'nei meitzi. It takes in and doesn't excrete. The only way a Yitush can feed somebody else is in death. As long as it's alive, it's a machnes ve'nei meitzi, right? So it's considered the low. And a Yid who doesn't have Eira is lower than a Yitush. Why? Because by animals, their teva is their containment. Their container. An animal will never be worse than his nature mandates and dictates. Now some animals are pretty brutal. Some animals are pretty, I guess the right word is high on testosterone. They're very, very aggressive. They kill. Some of them kill for food. Some of them kill for pleasure. Some of them kill for hoarding. Some of them kill for no other reason other than to enjoy the pleasure of killing. But whatever teva the Eibishter gave them, they never exceed it. That's the pshat in the pasuk. Ufkudasa yizborich shomer aruch. The Eibishter gave each animal a pkuda, an instruction, a mandate, a nature, and it guards their ruach. They never cross a line. Right, the pasuk brings down, Loi uchalav et piyad Hashem lasis teveirah. I cannot cross over the line to do good or bad without the Eibishter's permission. Who said that? Bilam said that. Bilam said, the teva of every animal limits him. And accordingly, the teva of every human being also limits him. The teva of a human being says, if I'm a yid, we're talking about the animal soul. Dvorim amutarim, permitted temptations, I very much desire, I lust, I want. But an avera is against the teva, the nefesh habamis of a yid. The Rabbi said, that's what we just read. Twice. I'll read it again if you want. And lahav lagoi has Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach that he was given, and the Sheva mitzvah of a goy is the Tayag mitzvah of a yid, but teva he cannot violate Sheva mitzvah. So Kupitz again to frage, I know somebody who met a yid who once didn't have a Rahman, how could it be? So the answer is, it says in Tanya Perich of Dalet, Eino de Mever Aveda Alim Kei Nichnas Bei Ruach Shtus. There's a difference between animals and human beings. Animals have a teva, have a nature, and they cannot go outside of their nature, period. They got many. Human beings were given the blessing or the curse, or the blessing of the curse, or the curse of the blessing, or the blessing of the blessing of free will. The free will, as the Rambam describes it, allows a person to be as big a tzaddik as Moshe Rabbeinu, or as big a Rasha as Bilam HaRasha. And the Rambam, the way he reads it, it sounds like a sikha from the Rebbe. Anybody who wants can be as great as Moshe Rabbeinu. And anybody who allows it can be as lowly as Bilam HaRasha. Both of those things would be great achievements for the average person. We were given free will. And the free will allows for going against our teva l'greis, to go against our nature in the negative. Animals don't have free will. That's the pshat yitush kodmach. That's the meaning of this Gemara. Why is a yid who doesn't have Veda worse than a mosquito, worse than a gnat, worse than an insect that's a machnes ve'nei meitzi? Because that animal has a teva and it will never exceed it. He'll never be worse than its teva allows for. Teva designed to be. The skeleton, the box, the container, the containment that the Eibush to put him in. And the human being can exceed it. That's what an Aveda is. It's going against your teva. So the Rebbe in that Maimed, in Bossi Lagan, there's a letter, the letter writes, how does a goy behave in the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Neach? So the Rebbe answers, a Jew answers a question with a question. How is a Yid oivet hayag mitzvahs? And the teretz is ruach shtos. So just like by a Yid, the only way you can do an Aveda is ruach shtos, lahav lagoy. When he's one of his Sheva Avedas, it's ruach shtos, because against the teva. This is a fascinating thing to contemplate. A human being was created by God with limits. limits on the low end, not on the high end. Limits of v'nidriget fallen, how low he will fall. But the human being was given the freedom to raise himself above those limits, and therefore, by the same token, the human being was given the freedom, Rahman al-Islam, to lower himself lower than those limits. And in Chassidus, this is discussed. How? How does a person do an Aveda if it's against the Teva of his Nefesh HaBamis? And again, that's what's written here in these 5 lines. I can read it a third time if it'll help. But that's what it says here. A Yiddish Yetzer Hara loves pizza and ice cream and nice cars and vacation and early retirement and alle andere Narishkeiten. But an Aveda, it's against his Teva. And yet he doesn't Aveda. So the Chassidus asks the question, and the answer is found in amongst other places. In the Kuntres of Mayan, Maimon Beis Pedekal, the Rebbe Rashab has a Maimon called Kuntres of Mayan. It's divided up into 28 to 29 Maimorim. In the beginning of the second Maimon, the Rebbe Rashab starts, how does he do an Aveda? And he brings a Gemara that you all know. That the Gemara says, Kach Hidarko Shal Yetzer Hara. How does the Yetzer Hara operate? You come to a Yid and tell him, do an Aveda, he tells you, as Rabbi Hecht would say in front of the Rebbe, go fly a kite. Don't bother me. Leave me alone. Yeah. So the Yetzer Hara, I say kach. Today you do this. Well, the Machar I say kach. Tomorrow he tells you to do something else, and he brings you there. Until he tells you leich aveda zara. Eventually he brings you Rahman aveda zara. On this Maimon Chazal, on this Gemara, kach idarke Yetzer Hara, I say kach, and so on and so forth. There is a number of different interpretations in the Mori Hasidus. One of them is, the one that the Rebbe talks about more frequently, and it's based on a Maimon from Friedrich Rebbe. One of them is that the Yetzer Hara comes to you and he sees you doing a mitzvah. And he says, I say kach tu azeh. You're doing a mitzvah? Good, do a mitzvah. He sees you learning Tanya, he says, good, learn. Why? He has to get in. The beginning of the Yetzer Hara's entry into your world is he's your Chassidisha Mashpia, you understand. He's your buddy. He's interested in Avedis Hashem. Asay kach tu asay. And of course the Yetzer Hara comes to you and says, Asay kach do a mitzvah. But the Yetzer Hara comes to do a mitzvah and enjoy it, get covered from it, become a balgaiva because of it, think that you're better because of it, machzik teva leyatzmei, matztik esatzmei, all those L'Shem say, because of mayim. But how the Yetzer Hara gets into your head that you're safe, that you're cool, that you're, tzadikata. And once he gets into your head, he says, you're such a special person, you could relax. You don't have to work so hard. Someone who's not as special as you, but you're already a ransom mitzvahs. You can vacation, you can rest, you can relax. And that's how he gets into the person. And the end of it is, he brings you down to a place, but how does it start? I say kach. He gets involved in your Yiddishkeit. And he brings to you yeshus. He brings to you self-satisfaction. He takes from you the idea that doing a mitzvah is a command from the Meibesh. And he makes it a personally positive experience. And then he brings you to a point where you not only stop doing the mitzvah with agishmak, you do even faket. That's one interpretation of this Gemara. There's another interpretation. The second one is in the Kuntres Amayim. That the Yetzer Hara wants us to enjoy mutter taivas. Eat pizza that's kosher. Eat meat that's kosher. You don't have to be so careful about the hechsher. And Chassidus argues, if you're familiar with the Kuntres Amayim, that's what Kuntres Amayim is all about. Kuntres Amayim revolves around one word. Shtus. Shtus, narishkeit, follow. And the shtus of the Yetzer Hara is, it's permitted, why not enjoy it? It's kosher, mamek. And what does the Rebbe Rashab say? Sure, you're allowed, but you're a human being. You want to stoop to that level? Yeah, you're allowed, you can do whatever you want. But this is what you want to be. I know you're allowed, but should you? Everything that you're allowed, you should. The Yetzer Hara comes to you and says, what's wrong? It's okay, it's kosher. And the Yetzer Tov says it's allowed, but it's not necessary. It's undesirable. And this is the tug. This is the tug of war. The Yetzer Hara is trying to say to you, it's okay, what's wrong? And the Yetzer Tov is saying to you, Medafas nisht. And if you don't need it, then you're going to indulge, it's going to schlep you down. But Tachi, Darkash, Yetzer Hara, that's the M.O. It's the modus operandi of the Yitzhak. The Rebbe Rashab says that people who allow themselves indulgences, b'var ma'mutarim, lo'id kosher, everything is kosher, they're very true. They lose their chush. They lose their feeling. He can take you across the threshold that you can do an Aveda and it go against your nature. Go against your nature, and when you say the word nature in this conversation, you mean emphatically dafke, the nature of the Yetzer Hara. The nature of Yetzer Hara. The Yiddish Yetzer Hara wants to enjoy life, but not to sin. An Aveda is against the Teva. It's an alien. To a Jew, an Aveda, to a Jew's Yetzer Hara. The Aveda is an alien. And to a Goy is Yetzer Hara. Violating one of the Sheva mitzvahs, B'nai Neach, is against his Teva. And how does it happen? This is why in Hasidus they talk about you have to manage Gashmias, so Gashmias is going to manage you. Right? We live in an age of incredible technology and opportunity and communication and so on and so forth. All these tools are incredibly helpful if you're a balabas over those tools. Tzadikim libam b'shus. The minute those tools become a balabas over you, they show him hey b'shus libam, they become another prison. As if we didn't have enough prisons before this, now we have another prison. The cell phone and the computer and all the other things, they entrap us. And we let them. Why? Oh, phone's a good thing, I gotta have one. Computer's a good thing, I gotta have one. I'm only using it for business. Yeah. That's how it starts. And that's the Yayim Azekach. Ulamochem Azekach. So you have over here a Moedin Dikidere. Alter Rebbe, I'm saying it one more time. The Alter Rebbe says in these 5 lines of Tanya that an Aveda is a Hepech, the Teva, the Nefsha, Bahamas Aveda. The Yitzhak Hara Aveda, which is Lord Nefsha. And Lahavlin, one of the Maimorim, the Rebbe says that a Aveda of the Sheva Mitzvahs is against the Teva, the Nefsha, Bahamas, and the Yitzhak Hara, Lahavlin, Agoy. How does it happen that we fall over there? It's called Ruach Shtus. It's called Nochri. It's called alien to me, fremd, right? And it's where you say, Yitush Kodma, chapter 24 in Tanya, that an animal is better than me because an animal doesn't go against his nature. These are incredibly significant 5 lines. And it tells you how the Eibush created us. Hashem creates every creation with a personality and a nature. Most of those creations can't raise themselves above it and can't fall below it. We have the capacity to go above our nature, and we therefore accordingly also have the capacity to go beneath our nature. But the Tava of Ayid is a Kenetan and Aveda. The nature of the Jew is that he can't do an Aveda. That's what it says in these 5 lines. Questions or comments? Go ahead.
So going against the nature is called...
Well, amongst other, you mean lower or higher?
Lower.
The Alter Rebbe called it Ruach Shtus, a spirit of folly. It's a stupidity.
Right. So Yetzer Hara isn't that. When you do an Avera because...
Well, the Yetzer Hara got you there.
Right.
How?
No, I get it how. I just wonder what it's called.
Yeah, it's called Ruach Shtus.
Okay.
Ruach Shtus.
And the other thing is, when the Rebbe talked about Sheva Mitzvahs, he made a point of saying, because Hashem said, I guess you start them off on the right foot to begin with. Like, not because I'm such a good person, I'm doing these, but because... You know what I'm saying? It falls in with
but we need the same thing also because Hashem
but
said.
I just remember that being part of the campaign. I think it's so interesting that he made such a thing of that.
Right, of course. That God is watching. Ayin Re'eh ve'ezen shemas. An eye that sees and an ear that hears, and everything that you do is recorded in a book. And after also, you have to give a calculation.
I think it's interesting that, just to remind, it's not because you're such a good person or you're going to get an award.
Because I make it a meaningful life. The Eibush said. Now the truth is, it's the nature of a human being to be good, but the nature is vulnerable. The nature can be exhausted. So you have to have Kabbalah Sel. You have to have Yiddah. That's what this is called.
They get a chinuch of their elders killed to read about nations around Israel. That they have no chance in life. They're
I hear it.
born under chinuch.
Yeah.
It's a kill.
Yeah.
It's a mitzvah.
Yeah. Right. So there's a Rambam, which he says about the Yidden, and you should know Yidden and Goyim are not entirely the same. There's a Sikha from the Rebbe in Pashas Lech Lecha, I think, Vayera, where the Rebbe discusses how Avram Avinu would blackmail people into davening to the Eibishter. If they don't want to daven, they have to pay for their food. And the Rebbe says, what a waste of time. What's he trying to do? what kind of spiel is it? To take somebody and say, listen, either you pray to God or you pay me $100. You pray how much prayer costs? A few words. I'll give you a few words, yeah? And the Rebbe says, what credibility does it have? Now he doesn't say, if it would be a Yid, he would say, Pintel a Yid. There's no Pintel a Goy. In other words, by a Yid there's two things. Number one, his Nefesh HaBahamis doesn't want to do Avedes. And number two, his Nefesh HaLakis is buttons in the Mebish. By a Goy, his Nefesh HaBahamis doesn't want to do Avedes, but the other half you don't have. So the Rebbe talks about conditioning. He talks about what you said. That you condition him going good, he will not exceed his nature. But Rabbi was trying to, he was going to bribe them, shalei lishma, to condition them in this way. So anyway, so I don't know if you can say everything you say about a Yid by a Goy. What I told you before is in a mind. I didn't make it up. So I'm just going to show there's a Rambam in Hilchos Mamre. I mean, this is the most Chassidish Rambam of all. Where the Rambam talks about the Kroim, the Karaites. Kroim were a lot of the Apokurs. Like the times of the Shas, times of the basically, with the Shema. They had the Tzdukim by Tusim, the Sadducees, who didn't believe Teresh Baal Peh. Correct? We all know about them. And they, of course, ended up, Rachmana litzlan, these are the first Christians. But in the Middle Ages, there was another incarnation of the same. They were called Kroim. I had students, when I first started out, 30 years ago, who came from different states in Russia. Huh? Right. And there's certain places in Russia where there's whole communities of Yidden today. So there's a big street, there's a Kroim Gas. The Rambam personally fought with Kroim. The Rambam only lived 900 years ago. The Tzdukim were over 2,000 years ago. The man by Yossi. They were all the same idea. They didn't leave Teresh Baal Peh. The Rambam fought with them tooth and nail. The Rambam fought with them reason soft. So the Rambam writes like this: if a guy is raised in a Kroy household and he learns Kol HaTeirah Kula, Teresh B'Ksav Teresh Baal Peh, but the screen through which it is filtered is a Kroim filter, which means that he's taught all of this through the mindset of Teresh B'Ksav without Teresh Baal Peh, and the guy grows up to be an Apokadis and a Kefer B'Yikid. He is called Tinei Shenishba Lebein Ha'umas. This is a Rambam. A person grows up and he knows Kol HaTeirah Kula. Kol HaTeirah Kula can learn a Sach Besa Ve'ala Rosh Yeshiva. But his chinuch was a Treifa chinuch, was a chinuch that says this is not Min HaShamayim. And he's even a Teresh Baal Peh. He doesn't keep any of the halachas l'mishim misina. Right? He has his whole Shabbos. Al Yetz Ishbim Kemi, he sits in one corner. They survive away, just sit in the cold, in the dark, they don't eat hot food, so you must make a fire Shabbos. Yeah? Shabbos is on Sunday, it doesn't matter when Pesach was. And on and on and on and on and on. Apokadis. Doesn't leave Teresh Baal Peh. But this was his chinuch, he's called a Tinei Shenishba Lebein. So you're asking how is it by Goyim? And I can't answer because I don't know, maybe. But this is how it is by you. I'm answering you. I'm saying something because of the way you ask. Okay, so we're going to take an interruption and then we're going to learn a Maimed, okay?